The makers of Campbell Soup present the Campbell Playhouse. Orson Welles producing. Good evening, listeners. This is Ernest Chappell speaking. Tonight, Orson Welles and the Campbell Playhouse observe a Campbell tradition of long standing. They bring you Charles Dickens' well-loved tale of Yuletide, A Christmas Carol. 4 years ago, in 1934, the makers of Campbell's Soups went shopping for a Christmas present to give all their friends. They found it in this story, Charles Dickens' embodiment of the very spirit of Christmas. And they chose well, because throughout the country today, in thousands of homes, it has become an important and beloved Christmas custom to listen to this story. Tonight, this fourth annual presentation is brought to you with a sincere wish that your Christmas may be a happy one, and with the hope that the retelling of A Christmas Carol may help make it so. And now, an announcement from our producer, Mr. Orson Welles.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the first year that I've shared in this happy tradition of the Campbell Playhouse. And I'm only sorry that very grand actor, Lionel Barrymore, was not able to come to New York this Christmas to be part of our broadcast tonight. We're depending on him to be with us next year, as he's been in the past, and I, for one, am looking forward to that. But as this was a last-minute development, in addition to being tonight's narrator, I shall also endeavor to fill in as the infamous Ebenezer Scrooge. And on this day, at least in the calendar of our year 1938, we affirm the glory of our God by the laughter of our children. Every nation, according to its character and its taste, by some gift of gaiety, has enriched the tradition of this festival. Storytelling has persisted as a Christmas ritual in spite of the printing press. Therefore, it is mildly surprising that the best of them all and the most loved of them all turns out to be a ghost story. I have endeavored, writes the author on its title page, I have endeavored in this ghostly little story to raise the ghost of an idea which will not put my readers out of humor with themselves, with each other, with the season, or with me. May it haunt their houses pleasantly, and no one wish to delay it. And it's signed, your faithful friend and servant, Charles Dickens. On behalf of all who have been most pleasantly haunted by your wonderful story, I say thank you. Marley was dead to begin with. There's no doubt whatever about that. The register of his burial was signed by the clergyman, the clerk, the undertaker, chief mourner. Scrooge signed it, and Scrooge's name was good upon change for anything he chose to put his hand to. Old Marley was as dead as a doornail. Scrooge knew he was dead, of course he did. Scrooge and Marley were partners, I don't know how many years. Oh, he was a tight-fisted, hand-to-the-grindstone Scrooge. Scrooge, a squeezing, wrenching, grasping, scraping, clutching, covetous old sinner, secret and self-contained. Once upon a time, of all the good days in the year, on Christmas Eve, old Scrooge sat busy in his counting house. It was a cold, bleak, biting evening, foggy without, and he could hear people in the court outside go wheezing up and down, beating their hands on their breast and stamping their feet upon the pavement to warm them. The door of Scrooge's counting house was open that he might keep his eyes upon his clerk, Bob Cratchit, who in a cold and dismal little cell beyond worked away at his ledger.
29, 9, 2, 13, 17, 7, carry 1.
Close the door, Cratchit. Shut up that infernal noise.
Yes, Mr. Scrooge.
Down there, impudence. Hey there, Cratchit.
Yes, Mr. Scrooge.
You're to stop at Fothergill's on your way home tonight. Collect that 17 shillings and 6pence that he's owed me since Michaelmas. And tell him I shall have the constable over here if he doesn't pay at once.
Well, sir, Mr. Fothergill's wife is...
What do I care about his wife?
She's...
I just want my 17 and 6.
I just thought it being Christmas.
Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, Bob.
Oh, well, Mr. Fred, well, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you, Uncle.
Huh?
Merry Christmas, Uncle.
Bah. Humbug.
Humbug.
Christmas is a humbug.
Christmas a humbug. Uncle, I'm sure you don't mean that.
I do. Merry Christmas. What right have you to be merry? What season have you to be merry? You're poor enough.
Well, come then, Uncle. What right have you to be dismal? You're rich enough.
Ah, humbug.
Don't be cross, Uncle.
What else can I be? Live in such a world of fools. What's Christmas to you but a time for paying bills without money? Merry Christmas. The time for finding yourself a year older and not an hour richer. If I could work my will, every idiot who goes about with Christmas on his lips should be boiled with his own pudding and buried with a stick of his own holly through his heart.
Uncle!
Nephew! Keep Christmas in your own way and let me keep it in mine.
Keep it? But you don't keep it.
Then leave me alone, then. What do you want, nephew? A Christmas gift, no doubt.
I know that I came to wish you a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Much good Merry Christmas would do you. Much good has it ever done you.
There are many things from which I have derived good, by which I have not profited, I dare say, Uncle. Christmas among the rest. But I have always thought of Christmas time as a good time, a kind, forgiving, charitable, pleasant time. Therefore, Uncle, though it has never put a scrap of gold or silver in my pocket, I believe it has done me good and will do me good, and I say, God bless it.
Hurrah! God bless Christmas! Hurrah! Let me hear another sound out there, Bob Cratchit, and you'll keep your Christmas by losing your situation. As to you, nephew, I wonder that you don't go into Parliament talking of nonsense.
Don't be angry, Uncle. I want nothing from you. I ask nothing of you. Why can't we be friends?
Good afternoon.
Sorry you feel that way. Well, I've tried. Merry Christmas to you, Uncle.
Good afternoon.
And a Happy New Year, too.
Humbug. Humbug.
Merry Christmas to you, Bob. And the Missus and to Tiny Tim.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Fred. Same to you, sir. Good day, sir.
Good day, Bob. Merry Christmas, Uncle Ebenezer.
What a load of nonsense. Thummery. Talking of Christmas without a sixpence to jingle against another in his trousers pocket. You there, Bob Cratchit. You there. What are you doing out there?
Yes, sir.
What are you doing out there?
Oh, I was only putting a bit more coal on the fire, Mr. Scrooge, seeing it's so cold
You
in
put
here,
that
sir.
coal back in the scuttle.
Yes, sir.
Fire indeed. I tell you, if you use coal at that rate, you and I will soon be parting company, Bob Cratchit. You understand that? Many a young fellow would like your situation, you know.
I'm sorry, sir. My fingers were getting a little stiff with the cold.
Then put on your mittens.
Merry Christmas. Merry
There's
Christmas.
someone at the door. See who it is.
Yes, sir.
Merry Christmas, sir.
Merry Christmas, yes, sir?
Is this the firm of Scrooge and Marley?
Yes, sir.
I should like to see the head of the firm, if I may.
Oh, very good, sir. Step this way, please.
Yes, what is it?
Gentlemen, to see you, Mr. Scrooge.
Have I the pleasure of addressing Mr. Scrooge or Mr. Marley?
Marley's been dead these 7 years tonight.
Oh, on Christmas Eve.
And I'm
so
Scrooge,
sorry,
though
sir.
I doubt that will be any pleasure to you, sir.
Oh, I'm sure it will. Now, Mr. Scrooge, at this season of the year, it's only fitting that we who are more fortunate raise a fund to buy the poorest of us some meat and drink and means of warmth. Now, you may not believe it so, but many thousands are now in want of common necessities, and hundreds of thousands are in want of comfort, sir.
Are there no prisons?
There are plenty of prisons, sir.
And the workhouses? They're still in operation, I trust.
I wish I could say that they are not, but
The treadmill and the port hall? They are in full vigor, then?
both are very busy.
I'm very glad to hear that. I was afraid by what you said that something had occurred to stop them in their useful course. Well, sir, what do you want with me?
Well, Mr. Scrooge, a few of us are endeavoring to raise a fund for the poor and destitute. What should I put you down for?
Nothing.
You wish to remain anonymous?
I wish to be let alone. I don't make merry at Christmas time. I can't afford to help idle people be merry. I help to support establishments that take care of the poor. They cost enough. Let those who are badly off go there.
But many can't go there, sir, and many would rather die.
then let them do so, and decrease the surplus population. Besides, how do I know that's true?
You might know it someday, Mr.
It's
Scrooge.
not my business. Enough for a man to understand his own business and not interfere with other people. Mine occupies me constantly. Good afternoon, sir. Cratchit, show this gentleman out. Cratchit!
Yes, sir. This way, sir, please. Excuse me, sir. I couldn't help overhearing. I should like to contribute twopence. It's all I can afford, but if there are others in worse situations than I...
Oh, you're a generous fellow. I wish I might say the same of your employer. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir, and a Merry Christmas. 13, 24, 31, 1, and carry 3, 17, 22, 33...
Cratchit!
Oh, yes, sir.
Cratchit, too late for you to go to Fallingill's. You'll be closed up for Christmas like these other fools. You go ahead and close up this place now.
Yes, sir. It is getting a little dark. It's hard to see the figures.
I suppose you want the entire day tomorrow, Cratchit?
Yes, sir. Quite convenient, sir.
It's not convenient, and it's not fair. If I was to stop half a crown of your wages, you'd think yourself ill-used, I'll be bound.
Well, sir...
And yet you don't think me ill-used when I pay a day's wages for no work.
It's only once a year.
Once a year indeed. To find an excuse for picking a man's pocket every 25th of December. I suppose you must have the whole day. See that you're here earlier the next morning. Understand?
Oh, I will. Well, good night, sir. Good night. Merry Christmas, Mr. Scrooge.
The office was closed in a twinkling, and Bob Cratchit, with the long ends of his white comforter dangling below his waist, for he boasted no greatcoat, went down a slide on Cornhill 20 times in honor of its being Christmas Eve, and then ran home to Camden Town as hard as he could pelt to play with his family at Blind Man's Bluff. Scrooge, on the other hand, took his melancholy dinner in his usual melancholy tavern, and having read all the newspapers and spent the rest of the evening with his banker's book, went home to his dismal house. The yard was so dark that even Scrooge, who knew its every stone, had to grope with his hands. The fog and the frost hung about the black oak gateway of the house. Darkness is cheap, and Scrooge liked it. Before he shut his heavy door, he walked through his rooms to see that all was right. Sitting room, bedroom, lumber room, all as they should be. Nobody under the table, nobody under the sofa. Small fire in the grate of his bedroom. Spoon and basin ready and a little saucepan of gruel on the hob. Nobody under the bed, nobody in the closet. He closed his door and locked himself in, double-locked himself in. Then took off his cravat, put on his dressing gown and slippers and his nightcap, and sat down before the fire to take his gruel. It was a very low fire, indeed nothing on such a bitter night, not even enough to kindle a glow of light in the cheerless room. Scrooge stretched his numb fingers over the embers of the wretched fire. Then he saw something that made him draw back. Slowly the meager embers dissolved before his astonished eyes, dissolved into a face, a ghostly face. But one that Scrooge recognized as the face of Marley. Marley, his partner, dead these 7 years. It was not angry or ferocious, but looked at Scrooge as Marley used to look, with ghostly spectacles turned up on its ghostly forehead. The hairs were curiously stirred like flames blown from a chimney draught, and through the death-cold eyes, Scrooge saw the buttons on the back of his coat. Humbug! Humbug! Scrooge got up and walked away from the fire. As he turned, his glance happened to fall upon a bell, a disused bell that hung in the corner of the room, and it was with great astonishment and with a strange, inexplicable dread. But as he looked, he saw this bell begin to swing, slowly at first. Humbug! Humbug! It was the face. The same face he'd seen in the fire. Marley's face, and Marley's body coming straight at him through the door. A body pale like bluish smoke as comes out of a chimney on a cold day. a body so transparent that Scrooge, looking through its waistcoat, could see his watch. There in his waistcoat pocket, there was a chain wrapped around his middle. It was long and it dragged behind him like a tail, and it was made of cash boxes, keys, padlocks, and heavy purses, rotting steel. Even now, Scrooge would not believe his eyes, but the ghost advanced toward him.
Ebenezer Scrooge. Ebenezer Scrooge.
What do you want with me?
Much.
Who are you?
Ask me who I was.
Who are you then, you particular for a ghost?
In life, I was your partner, Jacob Marley.
Marley? But you're dead. You died 7 years ago this very night.
You do not believe in me then?
I do not.
Why do you doubt your senses?
Because little things affect them. A slight disorder of the stomach makes him cheat. You may be an undigested bit of beef or a blot of mustard, a crumb of cheese, a fragment of an underdone potato. There be more gravy than grave about you, whatever you are. But humbug, I tell you, humbug. And then, so odd, the spirit reached up and untied the bandage that was wrapped around his head, as though it were too warm to wear indoors. As he removed the bandage, the lower jaw dropped, lifeless, upon his breast. Ah!
The world in mind. Do you believe in me now?
I do, Jacob, I do. Why do you walk the earth? Why'd you come to me, Jacob?
It is required of every man that his spirit should walk abroad among his fellow men and travel far and wide, to witness what he cannot share but might have shared on earth. And
tell me, Jacob, what is that chain you wear around yourself?
I wear the chain I forged in life. Cash boxes, keys, padlocks, purses, ledgers. I made it link by link of my own free will. Is its pattern strange to you, Ebenezer? Yours was as long and as heavy as this 7 years ago, and you've labored on it since.
Oh, Jacob Marley, tell me no more. Speak comfort to me, Jacob.
I have none to give, Ebenezer. No rest, no peace. Incessant torture of remorse.
Yes, but you are always a good man of business, Jacob.
Business? Mankind was my business. Charity and mercy, benevolence, they were all my business. Dealings of my trade were but a drop of water in the incomprehensible.
Jacob!
Hear me, Ebenezer Scrooge. My time is nearly done.
I will, Jacob. But don't be hard on me. Speak to me, Jacob, but please don't be flowery.
I am here tonight to warn you that you yet have a chance and hope of escaping my fate.
You are always a good friend to me, Jacob. Thank you. Now go on. Go on.
Listen to me, Ebenezer. You will be haunted by 3 spirits.
I think I'd rather not be.
Without their visit, Ebenezer Scrooge, you cannot hope to shun the path I have tread. Expect the first tomorrow when the bell tolls 1. Expect the second on the next night on the same hour. The third upon the next night. Look to see me no more. And look for your own sake that you remember what has passed between us.
Marley! Jacob Marley! Scrooge awoke. He was lying on his bed. Suddenly the curtains of his bed were drawn aside, and Scrooge found himself face to face with the unearthly visitor who drew them back. He was as close to it as I am now to you, and I am standing in spirit at your elbow. It was a strange figure, like a child, yet not so like a child as an old woman. Its hair, which hung about its neck and down its back, was white, as if with age, and yet the face had not a wrinkle. and the tenderest of bloom was on the skin. Its dress was of the purest white, trimmed with summer flowers. It held a branch of fresh green holly in its hand, but the strangest thing about it was that from the crown of its head there sprang a clear jet of light, by which all of this was visible, and which was doubtless the occasion of its using in its duller moments an extinguisher for a cap, which it now held under its arm.
Ebenezer Scrooge! Ebenezer Scrooge!
What? Are you the spirit whose coming was foretold to me?
I am.
What are you?
I am the ghost of Christmas past.
Long past?
No, your past.
What brings you here? What do you want of me?
Your welfare, Ebenezer Scrooge. Rise and walk with me.
No, not the window. I can't step out the window. I'm mortal. I'll fall down.
The touch of my hand will bear you up, and you shall not fall. You will be upheld in more than this. Come, follow me. Let us go.
They stood upon an open country road with fields at either hand. The city had entirely vanished. The darkness and the mist had vanished with it, for it was now a clear, cold winter day with snow upon the ground. As they walked along the road, Scrooge began to recognize every gate, every post, every tree. Finally, a little market town appeared in the distance with its bridge, its church, and its winding river. And he saw the form of shaggy ponies trotting, with boys upon their backs and pulling sleighs. And all these boys were in great spirits, shouting to each other. They were happy, shouting through the broad fields, filling it so full of music that the crisp air laughed to hear it. And there, on the hill, stood old Scrooge, in his dressing gown and slippers and nightcap, and beside him the spirit of Christmas past. It was now that the spirit spoke.
Not all boys and girls were singing on that Christmas day, were they, Ebenezer Scrooge? See that bleak building over there?
That building? Yeah, I was a boy there. Yes, I went to school in that place.
You recollect the way?
I could walk it blindfold.
Strange you have forgotten it for so many years. Come, let us go closer. Look through the window into this cold, barren room. What do you see, Ebenezer Scrooge?
I see a boy.
A solitary child, neglected by his friends, sitting in a room, a book open before him.
Yes, I see. I know that boy. I am that boy. I was lonely. Poor boy. My father bid me stay at school through Christmas.
Your lip is trembling, Scrooge. What's that on your cheek?
Nothing. I wish... It's too late now.
What is the matter?
Nothing. A boy singing a Christmas carol at my door yesterday. I should have given him a penny. Instead, I shut him out, that's all.
That's all? Come, Ebenezer Scrooge, let us see another Christmas. Do you know this place, Ebenezer?
You know it. No, this is the counting house where I was apprenticed.
Listen.
Fezzy. It's my old master, Fezziwig. Bless his heart, my old master alive again, and we his clerks are full of joy on Christmas Eve.
Look, Scrooge. Look at that carefree young man with the light heart and the gay smile. Do you recognize him, Ebenezer?
Yeah.
What's the matter, Ebenezer?
Nothing particular.
You are thinking?
Yes, but no. Yes. Just that I should like to say a word or two to my clerk, Bob Cratchit, that's all.
That's all? My time grows short, and we have yet another journey to make.
Where now?
Come.
Again, Scrooge saw himself in a room that was vaguely familiar. He was a young man, a man in the prime of his life. He was not alone. He sat by the side of a fair young girl, but there were tears in her eyes.
I mean very little to you, Ebenezer. I know. Another idol has displaced me, and if it can cheer and comfort you in time to come, as I would have tried to do, I have no just cause to grieve.
What idol has displaced you?
A golden one.
Well, listen to me. There's nothing worse or hard as poverty, and yet the world pretends to condemn the pursuit of wealth.
The world again. You fear the world too much,
How
Ebenezer.
have I changed toward you?
When we were engaged, we were both poor.
Was it better then? Was it better to be poor?
Better at least to be happy. You've changed. You were another man.
I was a boy then. Do you blame me because I've grown wiser? Have I ever tried to break our engagement?
Your word? No, never.
Then what? Then what?
And a changed nature. An altered spirit and everything that made my love have any value in your sight. So I release you from your promise.
Belle, I love you still.
Oh, at first it may cause you pain to lose me. A very brief pain. But soon it will dim like a half-remembered dream, an unprofitable dream. You'll be glad to be awake from such a dream. May you be happy in the life you have chosen, Ebenezer, for the love of him you once were.
My time grows short, and we have yet another journey to make.
Where now?
Come.
The relentless ghost pinioned him in both his arms and forced him to observe what happened next. They were in a room, not very large or handsome, but full of comfort. All around them, the voices of children talking and laughing, and before the winter fire sat a beautiful young girl, so like the last that Scrooge believed it was the same, until he saw her mother, the girl he had been betrothed to, now a handsome, middle-aged woman sitting with her husband by their own fireside.
Do you see this man, Ebenezer Scrooge? This man might have been you, and that girl might have been your daughter, Ebenezer Scrooge. She might have called you father.
Spirit!
She might have been a springtime in the haggard winter of your life.
Spirit, show me no more.
Listen now while they speak, Ebenezer.
I saw an old friend of yours today.
Who was it?
Guess.
How can I? Oh, I know. Mr. Scrooge.
Mr. Scrooge it was. I passed his office window. It wasn't shuttered, and there was a candle inside. So I couldn't help seeing him. His partner lies at the point of death, I hear, and there Scrooge sat, all alone. Quite alone in the world.
I feel sorry for him.
In his anguish, Scrooge began to struggle with the ghost of Christmas past. The lights in the crown of its head burned high and bright. Scrooge, in a last desperate effort, tore his cap from his own head, and by a sudden action pressed it down upon the spirit's head until the bright light was extinguished and the spirit shrank away. At this, Scrooge was conscious of being exhausted and overcome by irresistible drowsiness, and further of being in his own bedroom. He returned the cap to his own head and had barely time to reel to bed before he sank into a heavy sleep. The stroke of one awakened him and set him bolt upright in bed.
We pause now for station identification. This is the Columbia Broadcasting System. You're listening to the 4th annual presentation of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, brought to you by the makers of Campbell Soup. We return you now to the Campbell Playhouse and Orson Welles.
On the stroke of one, Scrooge had awakened suddenly and sat upright in his own bed. He remembered the words of Marley's ghost and wondered from which direction the second spectre would appear. He drew aside the curtains and established a sharp lookout all around the bed. At that moment, nothing between a baby and a rhinoceros would have astonished him very much. But now, being prepared for almost anything, he was not by any means prepared for nothing. And consequently, when no shape appeared, he was taken with a violent fit of trembling. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, a quarter of an hour went by. Yet nothing came, and all this time he sat upon his bed with his nightcap upon his head, and upon it shone the very core of a blaze of ruddy light which streamed upon it. Being only light, this was more alarming than a dozen ghosts, because he was powerless to make out what it meant. He began to think that the source of this ghostly light might be in the adjoining room, from whence, on further tracing it, it seemed to shine. He got up softly and shuffled in his slippers to the door, and it was his own sitting room, there was no doubt about that. But it had undergone a surprising transformation. The walls and ceiling was so hung with living green that it looked a perfect grove, from every part of which bright gleaming berries glistened, and such a mighty blaze went roaring up the chimney as had never been known in Scrooge's time, or for many and many a winter season gone. Heaped upon the floor to form a kind of throne were turkeys, geese, game poultry, great joints of meat, suckling pigs, long wreaths of sausages, mince pies, plum puddings, barrels of oysters, red-hot chestnuts, and seething bowls of punch that made the chamber dim with a delicious steam. And in easy state upon his couch there sat a jolly giant, glorious to see, who bore a glowing torch in shape not unlike Plenty's horn, and held it up high, high up to shed a light on Scrooge as he came peeping around the door.
Come in, Ebenezer Scrooge, and know me better, man. I'm the ghost of Christmas present. Huh. Look upon me. You've never seen the like of me before.
Spirit, conduct me where you will. I went forth last time on compulsion and learned a lesson which is working now. If tonight you have anything to teach me, let me profit by it.
Touch my robe, Ebenezer Scrooge. Touch my robe.
The room vanished. So did the fire. The ruddy glow and aura of night vanished. Sunlight brushed them as they streamed through the clear morning air. The second spectre flew at a more leisurely speed, and Scrooge had time to observe people below shoveling snow on the city roofs, calling out to one another from the parapets, and every now and then pelting each other with snowballs. In the streets below them the poulterers' shops were open, and the fruiterers' stalls were radiant in holiday glory. Scrooge and his ghostly guide circled the tall spire of a church, where bells rang out calling all good people to church or chapel. And there, below them, lay Camden Town, with its squalid streets of ugly frame houses. Of all these dwellings, the ghost selected the humblest for their visit. Scrooge, by now past all surprise, recognized Bob Cratchit's wife, dressed in a twice-turned gown with raven ribbon. She was busily laying a table. Assisting her was Belinda Cratchit, second of her daughters, also raven-ribboned, while Master Peter Cratchit plunged a fork into a saucepan of potatoes, and now two smaller Cratchits, a boy and a girl, came tearing in, screaming that outside the baker's they had smelled a goose and known it for their own. And now, basking in luxurious thoughts of sage and onions, the four young Cratchits danced about the table. And then the door opened.
Children, quiet. Oh, bless her heart. Why, Martha, my dear, how late you are. Merry Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas, Mother.
How late you are, Martha.
Oh, a great deal of work to finish up last night. We had to clear away this morning.
Oh, well, never mind. As long as you're here now, sit down before the fire and have a warm. Lord bless you.
But where's Father?
Oh, he's been at church with Tiny Tim. They'll be along directly.
How is Tiny Tim, Mother? Any better at all?
Sometimes I think he is, and sometimes I think, oh dear God, if anything should happen to Tiny Tim, if Tiny Tim should die.
Mother, you mustn't even think of such a thing.
I know, my dear. Oh, shh, smiles now. I hear your father at the latch.
And indeed, the opening door revealed Bob Cratchit, with 3 feet of comfy, exclusive of fringe, hanging down before him, his threadbare clothes darned up and brushed to look seasonable, and Tiny Tim upon his shoulder. Poor Tiny Tim. He carried a little crutch and had his limbs supported by an iron frame.
And there's Martha. I knew you'd come.
Merry Christmas, Father.
Oh, Merry Christmas, child. I knew you'd come.
And how did little Tim behave in church, Bob?
What does everyone?
He behaved as good as gold and better. Somehow he gets thoughtful sitting by himself so much and thinks the strangest things you've ever heard. He told me, coming home, that he hoped people saw him in church because he was lame. And it might be pleasant for them to remember on Christmas Day who made lame beggars walk and blind men see.
Tim, you darling.
Me too.
Oh, yes, children, all ready. Take your places and wait your turn. Plenty of stuffing and dressing and plum pudding for all of you. Now, Martha, you take care of Tiny Tim and see that he eats plenty. He must get strong and well.
Now, shall we say grace?
Yes, Bob.
Our Father, who art in heaven, we thank thee for the daily bread which in thou mercy dost give to us. Bless us this Christmas day, keep us all together, so that for many years to come we may unite here to do thy will and praise thy name. Amen.
Amen.
And now, my dears, with such a dinner, a toast, a Merry Christmas to us all, and God blesses us.
God bless us.
God bless us, everyone.
And now, to Mr. Scrooge. I'll give you a toast to Mr. Scrooge, the founder of the feast.
The founder of the feast, indeed, who pays you all of 15 shillings a week. I wish I had him here. I'd give him a piece of my mind to feast on, and I hope he'd have a good appetite.
My dear, the children, Christmas.
Well, it may well be Christmas, but such fails on such an odious, stingy man as Mr. Scrooge. You know he is, Bob. Nobody knows it better than you, poor fellow.
My dear, Christmas Day.
Well, I'll drink his health for your sake and the day's, not for his.
Me too.
Long life to him. A Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. He may be very merry and very happy, I have no doubt.
Me too. God bless us, everyone.
There was nothing of high mark in all of this. They were not a handsome family, these Cratchits. They were not well dressed. Their shoes were far from being waterproof. Their clothes were scanty and had known, very likely, the inside of a pawnbroker's. But they were happy, grateful, pleased with one another, and contented with the time, and when at last they faded, Scrooge had his eyes upon them, and especially on Tiny Tim, until the very last. Spirit, tell me if Tiny Tim will live.
I see a vacant seat in the pool chimney corner, and a crutch without an owner, as...
No, kind spirit, say he will be spared. Say he will live.
If these shadows remain unaltered by the future, the child will die.
Many calls Scrooge made that night with the ghost of Christmas past. Now he stood upon a bleak and desert moor where monstrous masses of rude stone were cast about as though it were the burial place of giants. Down in the west, the setting sun cast a fiery red which glared upon the desolation for an instant like a sullen eye, then was lost in the thick gloom of darkest night. A light shone from the window of a hut. Passing through the wall of mud and stone, they found a cheerful company assembled around the glowing fire. An old man and a woman and their children and their children's children, all decked out gaily in their holiday attire.
In this place, Ebenezer Scrooge, the miners live, laboring in the bowels of the earth. Still, they know me. You hear?
The spirit did not tarry here, but bade Scrooge hold his robe again, and passing on above the moor, they sped on. Whither? Not to see, but to see. To Scrooge's horror, looking back, he saw the last of the land. Below him were the waves breaking upon a range of large rocks. And built upon a dismal reef, a sunken stone some league or so from shore, there stood a solitary lighthouse. Great heaps of seaweed clung to its base, and storm birds, born of the wind, rose and fell upon it like the waves they skimmed. Again the ghost sped on above the dark and heaving sea, on and on until they lighted on a ship. And there, with happy music playing despite the storm, They stood beside the helmsman at the wheel, the lookout at the bow, and the man who had the watch. Dark, ghostly figures in their several stations. Much they saw, and far they went. In many places they visited, but always with happy end. The spirits stood beside sick beds, and they were cheerful. On foreign lands, and they were close at home. By poverty, and it was rich. In almshouse, hospital, and jail, where vain man and his little brief authority had not made fast the door and barred the spirit out, he left his blessing. It was a long night, if it were only a night, and it was strange, too, that while Scrooge remained unaltered, the ghost in its outward form grew older, clearly older.
My life upon this globe is very brief, Ebenezer. It ends tonight.
Tonight?
Tonight at midnight. The hour has come.
Not yet. Not yet. There are still more things I wish to learn.
These you will learn from still another spirit. Still another spirit. Still another spirit. Still another spirit.
Scrooge looked about him for the ghost. It had vanished. But he found himself once more on his bed in his dressing gown and his nightcap on his head. He heard the clock strike, and he remembered the prediction of Jacob. And lifting up his eyes, he beheld a solemn phantom, draped and hooded, coming toward him like a mist along the ground. The spirit slowly, gravely, silently approached. And the very air through which it moved seemed to scatter gloom and mystery.
I am the ghost of Christmas yet to come, Ebenezer Scrooge. I am about to show you the shadows of the things that have not happened, but will happen in the time before us.
Ghost of the future, I fear you more than any specter I've seen. Lead on, the night is waning fast in its precious time. Scrooge followed in the shadow of its dress, which bore him up as upon a carpet and carried him along. Suddenly, they were in a room where Scrooge had visited recently. Yes, he knew these people.
My son, my little son, Tiny Tim. I loved him so.
Mother dear, you mustn't. It's almost time for Father to be home. Don't let him see you crying.
It's past time. He's late tonight. He walks slower than he used to, and yet I've known him to walk very fast indeed with Tiny Tim on his shoulder.
So have I, Mother.
Yet he was light to carry, and his father loved him so that it was no trouble at all. No trouble at all.
Shh, Mother. It's Father now.
Bob!
Good evening, my dear.
You're late, Bob.
I'm sorry, my dear. I went to the churchyard today. I wish you could have gone with me. It would have done your heart good to see how sweet and green a place it is. But you will see it often. I promised him. I promised Tiny Tim we'd walk there on a Sunday.
Oh, Bob. Bob.
It's God's will, my dear.
Oh, my son. My little son. Tiny Tim. I loved him so.
It's all right, Mother.
Scrooge tried to break through the shade that held him, to talk with Bob Cratchit, to speak some word of comfort. But the sleeve of the ghost of Christmas yet to come passed in front of him and shut the family from his view. And suddenly they were in an obscure part of the town where Scrooge had never been before. The ways were foul and narrow, and the Shops and houses wretched, the people drunken, slipshod, and ugly. The whole quarter reeked with crime, with filth, and with misery. And there, deep in this den of infamous resort, in a low-brow, beetling old pawn shop, where iron, old rags, and bottles were brought, there stood a woman with a bundle. She raised it and placed it down upon the counter.
Undo me bundle, Joe.
Mr. Scrooge didn't die of nothing catching.
Oh, don't be afraid. I ain't so fond of his company I'd take a chance at that. Oh, you may look through that shirt until your eyes ache and you won't find a hole in it. It's the best you had, and a fine one, too. They'd have wasted it if it hadn't have been for me.
What you call a wasting of it, Mrs. Gilbert?
Well, putting it on him to be buried in. Somebody was fool enough to do it, but I took it off him again. If calico ain't good enough for such a purpose, it ain't good enough for anything. He can't look uglier than he did in that one, the old Laura. Oh, and here we have his bed curtains. Small use he'll have for him where he's going.
That's the truest word what is how you ever spoke, Mrs. Gilbert.
So this is the end of him, you see. He frightened everyone away from him when he was alive, to profit us when he was dead.
The phantom spread its dark robe before him for a moment like a wing, and withdrawing it revealed another place, a churchyard, walled in by houses overrun by grass and weeds, choked up with too much bearing, fat with repleted appetites, an unworthy place. The spirit stood among the graves and pointed down toward one in particular. Scrooge's gaze followed the finger of the spectre, and there, reading on that neglected stone, he saw his own name.
Ebenezer Scrooge.
Spirit, am I the man who lay dead?
Ebenezer Scrooge.
The spirit pointed to the grave, then to Scrooge, and again to the grave. As he did, the upper portion of its deep black garment was contracted for an instant in its folds, as if it had inclined its head.
Ebenezer Scrooge.
And then Scrooge saw an alteration in the phantom's hood and dress. It shrank, collapsed, and dwindled into a bedpost. Yes, and the bedpost was his own. The bed was his own. The room was his own. Best and happiest of all the time before him, the time was his own in which he could make amends. Running to the window, he opened it, he put out his head. Oh, the morning was bright, no fog, no mist. Clear, bright, jovial, stirring, cold piping the blood to dance in golden sunlight. Heavenly air, sweet, fresh air. And bells, yes, bells, oh, glorious, glorious. The streets nearly empty, save one man. You down there, you there, sir.
What's that, sir?
Oh, it's you, I know you. You called upon me at my office. What a fine fellow you are.
Mr. Scrooge?
Yes, old Scrooge himself. No, not old Scrooge. I am a new man, sir.
Sir, are you well, sir?
Very well indeed. What day is it, sir?
Today? Why, it's Christmas Day.
Christmas Day? Christmas Day? Then I haven't missed it. The spirits have done it all in one night. I don't know what to do. Oh, but I do. Tarry a moment, sir. I have something for you. Step through my gate, I beg you, and tarry just a moment.
Sir?
The old Scrooge was gone, not dead, but reborn a new man. Scrooge reappeared at the window and tossed his purse to the puzzled gentleman obediently waiting below.
But, sir, this is your purse.
No, not mine. Comfort for the poor. Glad comfort. Take it, my fine fellow. Oh, indeed you are a fine fellow.
But, sir...
You're right. It's not enough. Come see me on the morrow. I shall have several years' back payments to make. You will come?
Oh, indeed, sir. Merry Christmas, sir.
Merry Christmas to you, my good man. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. Oh, what should I do with this glorious day? I must call on someone. Fred, my dear nephew Fred, I shall show him how to properly make merry. Oh, I'm as light as a feather. I'm as merry as a schoolboy. Ha! Merry Christmas, everybody! Ha ha! Happy New Year! Merry Christmas to all the world! Next morning, Scrooge was early to his office. He went early for a reason. He wanted to be there first and catch Bob Cratchit coming in late. That was the thing he set his heart upon, and he did it. Yes, he did. The clock struck 9, no Bob. 15:15, no Bob. Scrooge sat with his door wide open that he might see him come in. At last he came. His hat was off before he opened the door, his comforter too. He was on his stool in a jiffy, riding away as though he were trying to overtake 9 o'clock.
8, 17, carry the 1, 4, carry the 2, 2, 31, 5.
Hello there, you're Cratchit.
Yes, sir.
Step this way, Cratchit.
Yes, sir.
Cratchit, what do you mean coming in at this time of day?
I'm very sorry, sir. I am behind my time.
You are? Yes, I think you are.
It's only once a year, Mr. Scrooge. It shall not be repeated. I was making rather merry yesterday,
And
sir.
I tell you what, my friend, I'm not going to stand this sort of thing any longer. And therefore, Bob Cratchit, I'm about to raise your salary.
Are you quite yourself, sir?
No, thank heaven, I'm not quite myself. Merry Christmas, Bob. Merry Christmas, my good fellow. And as merry a Christmas as I've given you for many years. I am raising your salary, and we'll see what I can do for Tiny Tim and the rest of your family. We'll discuss it this very afternoon over a Christmas bowl of smoking Bishop Bob. Now, you, make up those fires and buy another scuttle of coal before you dot another I, Bob Cratchit. And Scrooge was better than his word. He did it. He did it all, and infinitely more. And to Tiny Tim, who did not die, he was a second father. He became as good a friend, as good a master, and as good a man as that good old city knew, or any good old city, town, or borough in the good old world ever knew. He had no further intercourse with spirits, but looked upon the total abstinence principles ever after. And thereafter, it was always said of him that he knew how to keep Christmas and how to keep it well. May that truly be said of all of us. And as Tiny Tim observed,
God bless everyone.
God bless us, everyone.
You have just heard the 4th annual presentation of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, offered for your enjoyment by the makers of Campbell's Soup. And here is Orson Welles.
Ladies and gentlemen, on this night before Christmas, and all through the Campbell Playhouse, not a creature is stirring that doesn't wish you a very Merry Christmas.